What's going on, guys, and welcome back to AskGSM episode 338 here today for Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. And I hate to start off on such a negative note, but I feel obligated to, that Chad Gaspard officially passed away this past week. Absolutely fucking terrible story. You can read more details about it, but the gist of the story is this, that he was out at the beach a couple days ago. I believe on Sunday is when this thing happened. And he got caught up in a riptide, saved his son, had the lifeguard save his son before his own, and before they could get to him, just washed away. They couldn't find him until today when his body washed ashore, I believe in Venice. Just fucking terrible story. The guy died a hero. I always very much enjoyed Crime Time, but even more importantly than that, he was a stand-up human being. There was a story a couple of years ago, back in 2016, I want to say, that he actually I think he stopped an armed robbery at a gas station, if I'm not mistaken, which is, again, if that doesn't say anything about the guy's character, I don't know what does. Just an outstanding stand-up human being, and this is the fucking tragic shit you hate to hear, and just a terrible, terrible story. That, in addition to Larry Zonka, who I'll, talk more about in a moment, of 411mania.com, legendary wrestling columnist, reviewer, passed away, I believe, on Sunday or Monday as well. Monday was when the news broke, and I'm very familiar with Larry's work. I've been reading it religiously for years now. I'll get into more about that in a moment. But just a terrible week. That, in addition to the Owen Hart episode that aired last night for Dark Side of the Ring, a good episode, don't get me wrong, but very tragic watching it back. I never thought I would see Jim Cornette on the verge of tears, but we did during that episode, so just a fucking terrible week. I'll talk more about 2020 in a second, but 2020 can go fucking, whatever. Can go suck it, because this year has just absolutely sucked for a variety of reasons. In addition to everything else going on right now, the whole COVID situation, a lot of people losing their loved ones, and it's just terrible. So, this episode dedicated to Larry, dedicated to Shad. Hope you guys are doing well in the wrestling ring up above in the sky. But just a lot of tragic shit. We need some positive news. We really do. Maybe Double or Nothing will provide that ultimate distraction from all this sadness currently going up on Saturday. We can only hope. But I'll be talking more about Double or Nothing and more here on today's show. Today's show will be a bit shorter than usual, not just because we have a bit fewer questions than usual, which is actually good, just because I have to, as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm recording tomorrow's Wrestle Rant Radio with RJ about Double or Nothing, and then after that, we're doing the live stream, which I assume is going to be up before this. So if that is up before this, be sure to check that out. RJ and I are planning on watching AEW Double or Nothing 2019, which we were fortunate enough to be in attendance for about a year ago over Memorial Day weekend in 2019. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. If you want to send in questions to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. First question comes from Emmanuel A. from YouTube, who kind of put in his comment before the questions that he actually graduated, I believe, community college this past week. So congrats to Emmanuel for finishing that. That's a very tough task. As someone who's graduated college myself, I can absolutely attest to that. So congratulations, my man. We did work on a project together. I think I helped him with one of his projects he mentioned in the comment like 3 years ago. I remember that very clearly. So it was a pleasure, and thank you, Emmanuel, for not only continuing to contribute questions to the show and supporting the shit and all that other stuff while you're in school, but for all your hard work as well. It should absolutely be commended, so congrats. But his first question was this: I was caught off guard by the news of Larry Zonka's death. I remember reading old wrestling reviews like his when I binged older shows, a habit I may start up again now that I'm off school, but I digress. I was curious as to what other wrestling reviewers whose work you've caught that have stuck out to you. Yeah, so with Larry, I saw a lot of people saying they've been reading his reviews for years and years and years. I have as well, not nearly as long as other people. I'm kind of newer on the Larry Zonka bandwagon. I'm sure I've been reading his reviews on and off, like, for example, when I would rewatch, like you said, the older content in the WWE Network, and I needed a bit of a refresher as to what the storylines were or a match finish I may have forgot, because for a lot of those old Wrestle Rant videos, I did not take notes. I absolutely should have, but I didn't, for a lot of those old WWE Network pay-per-view reviews. So what I would do to kind of refresh the memory was go back after watching the pay-per-view and have, maybe not, not just Larry's, but a lot of other reviews from the 411 Network, 411mania.com. They do a lot of great wrestling content, throwback reviews, current reviews. So I'm sure I read Larry's reviews on the way to that, but I started reading his work every week when, I don't know what wrestling website I was using for news previously, probably Lords of Pain, which is odd. I didn't think I was reading that website for as long as I was. But I started reading 411mania.com because they also had entertainment news too, and they still do, so I still check it out from day to day. That's my go-to place for quick, up-to-date, credible news more often than not. And in checking out the site, I had realized that Larry was putting up regular reviews of not only Raw and SmackDown, but all the other shows I watched, from Ring of Honor, Impact, Lucha Underground at that point. He actually included one of my tweets in one of his Lucha Underground reviews around the time I started watching, or rather reading his work, which was cool. I never had the chance to interact with him or whatever, but he seemed like a great guy. He'd been with that site for a very long time. I believe it's in his bio on the website that he had been with the website since 2004. And he had been writing about wrestling, I believe, since 2002. That's almost 20 years. That's fucking crazy. But he did amazing work. Not only the throwback reviews of all the old pay-per-views, but a lot of the Raw reviews. I wrote this in my Raw review for this week, which I dedicated to his memory. But what I would often do before I published my own Raw review, I would kind of check what he had to say, and there's very few opinions of people who I listen to everyone's opinions, but in terms of that I hold very highly, only a few wrestling opinions, and I'm like, okay, if this person approves, then it must be good. Or if this person thought it was bad, then it must have been terrible, that type of thing. Larry was one of them. His Raw reviews were always must-read material for me. I never missed a single one in the last 4 or 5 years, in the last 3.5, 4 years. They were always, that he always had them up on time, right after Raw went off the air. Just great, great stuff. So his was always one of the reviews. And also, too, when I would do other articles about, for example, best matches from 2019, I would kind of double-check myself with stuff that he wrote about way back when to see if his opinion kind of lined up with mine. Sometimes I wouldn't always agree with what he had to say, but 9 times out of 10 I did, because I think he just did great work and, had a lot of knowledge on the business and the industry and WWE and history and whatever. So I always loved reading his reviews. But he was one of them, and you're kind of asking, what are the wrestling reviewers whose work that have kind of stuck out to me? Again, I really don't read a lot. I honestly don't. I just don't have the time. So I just kind of do my own thing and read very few or listen to a few other wrestling opinions. I would say the only 3 that really stick out to me are 411mania.com / Larry Zonka's work specifically. That ProWrestling.net, that's been my go-to spot for a long time. I started reading 411 Mania, back in 2016, I would say. I've been reading ProWrestling.net even longer than that. Probably a decade, ever since I got my own iPhone and it was an app on my phone. That's how long. I think I typed in Pro Wrestling apps, and that was one of the first one that came up. And I don't know if I have the app anymore, because I would read Prout's Pause. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his last name, Will. He doesn't really write for the website much anymore. I would read his stuff, again, all the time, whenever it went up, every Monday and Friday and whatever. But I kind of just read along now at the hit list, and Jason Powell, he does great work. So probably them, 411 Mania, and Solomonster, who I've talked about, ad nauseum here on the show before. He's a great guy. I've had the chance to talk to him and meet him and interview him, actually, many times before. I always listen to his podcast, hear what he has to say. So I would say those are probably the top 3 wrestling reviewers whose opinion I hold very highly, just because I think they have a lot of credence and credibility, and just a lot of they know what they're talking about, and they do great work, whether it be podcasting or writing or whatever. So I can't really think of too many other people whose work I read as religiously as I do those 3 websites / people. just because, again, I just don't really have the time. Emmanuel's second question, I heard Dark Side of the Ring is covering Owen Hart tonight, / Tuesday, because he put this in on Tuesday. And it's an episode I've been anxiously anticipating for the longest time. I'm not able to see it live, and I don't know if you have by the time you read this, and I have. But what have you heard about Owen Hart's life before the Dark Side of the Ring episode on him? If you don't mind, remind me to ask you about Owen Hart next week, because his story is something I find fascinating to talk about. So, I knew about Owen. Obviously, everyone knows about Owen Hart. If you know anything about anything that is professional wrestling, then you know Owen Hart. I knew about the tragedy, not in great detail as how it was kind of laid out on the show last night, which, by the way, like I just said, I did have the chance to, watch the episode last night. I don't want to say I enjoyed it. It was a very good episode. It was just very fucking depressing, as you would probably expect. I didn't know too much about the detail. I don't think a lot of people knew the detail of, from Martha Hart's perspective. She hasn't really done many interviews at all, I don't think, in the last 20 years. But, yeah, so I listened to the Talk is Jericho podcast. I watched that. I didn't follow it, look up every... I think I knew a lot more about the Benoit murders than I did Owen Hart's story and how he died with, Over the Edge, 99, blah, blah, blah. So I did know, the general gist of what happened that night 21 years ago at this point, I think from Friday, which again, the timing could not have worked out better for the timing of the episode, just because it aired 3 days before the anniversary of Owen's death. I don't know if they did that on purpose, but that's crazy if so, or if not, I guess. But yeah, I would love to learn more about that story. Again, I thought the episode was good. In a nutshell, I will say it was good. It was a very good episode. It was a great way to end the season. I just wish it was 2 hours. I feel like they barely scratched the surface of, the thing that held him. The what's it called? The thing that was latched onto him from up above. The word is escaping me right now for whatever reason. But I thought that was interesting. I think they could have gone into more detail about that. I don't know if the guy who, latched up Owen and whatever is still alive or not. I think it would have been nice to have his point of view from his perspective, and if he feels any guilt over it 20 years later. I'm sure he does, but does he live with it every day? That type of thing. It would have been nice to hear from the Hart family. I know she they actively worked against Martha, and maybe Martha only agreed to do the episode if they weren't a part of it. Maybe. I know Bret Hart's been on the show before, so it's not like he doesn't watch the show, or Vince McMahon would never be on the show, of course. But, Bret probably would have, but maybe they didn't want to have him on because Martha was on as well, and, she's very protective about the whole thing. I don't know. But anyway, it was very interesting. So I would love if you asked me about Owen Hart again next week. You're kind of asking me, what I know about Owen Hart pre-Dark Side of the Ring, what I know about Owen Hart's life just in general. Not a ton. Again, I know his career highlights with Bret, and, a lot of the stuff they did with Stone Cold Steve Austin towards the end of his career as the Blue Blazer as well, stuff like that. I don't know every match and feud he's ever had. I would love to do more research on that. Again, I've seen every WWE pay-per-view, but I haven't gone back and watched a compilation, right? Compilation. I always mispronounce that word. Owen Hart's best matches, which I probably should. His third question, if I see WWE is hyping Randy Orton versus Edge as possibly the greatest wrestling match, which, if nothing else, does make for an interesting discussion. So let's discuss. What is the recipe for a greater than great wrestling match? And do Randy Orton and Edge combine do they have what it takes to produce the greatest of them all? Again, this is very subjective, but what makes for a greater than great wrestling match is your question. I think a main factor is a hot crowd. They don't have that, so this is not going to be the greatest match of all time. First of all, if you're going to call it the greatest match of all time, I don't think I've ever seen a match that people were calling the greatest match of all time, and then it was the greatest match of all time. When you do that, it really sets people's expectations so high, it's almost impossible for them to be met. And Edge and Orton have always had good chemistry. I was not a fan so much of the WrestleMania match they just had. Granted, it was Last Man Standing, but I don't know if having a regular standard old singles match will be any better because there's no crowd. So it sucks. So that right off the bat, you absolutely, I can say with 99% certainty, you cannot have the greatest wrestling match of all time in an empty fucking building. It just doesn't work like that. So, that's one thing, which is why this will not be the greatest match of all time. They're overhyping it. You never overhype a match that ends up being the greatest of all time. I don't think Shawn and Taker, I don't think people were going into that match expecting it to be the instant classic that it was. Speaking of which, the build. The build is another big part of it. You can have a great wrestling match, like for example, it was actually 8 years ago today, Over the Limit 2012. CM Punk and Daniel Bryan had a phenomenal match on that pay-per-view. And I mean, it's remembered as being a classic, but I think also what held it back, I remember the builds being so weak. And people don't even really remember the build at all. And if you're thinking of like, oh, the Kane, AJ Lee, blah, blah, blah thing, that didn't even really come in until the summer. It was really just about Bryan and Punk going into that pay-per-view. And it wasn't even the main event for that pay-per-view, if you can recall correctly. It was John Cena versus John Laurinaitis, which is absolutely terrible. And they had Big Show interfere. It was so bad. It was really, really bad. So the build for Punk and Bryan was really just an afterthought. But they ended up going out there and having this great wrestling masterpiece. So telling a good story, again, a greater than great wrestling match, I feel is a match that I could show to any non-wrestling fan and they would enjoy it. You know, it's really a matter of personal preference, but a great story/video package, a hot, invested crowd, you know, emotion, suspense, exciting in-ring action. It's got to check off all the boxes. So when you say the greatest match of all time, the first match, of course, I think of is Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker from WrestleMania 25. So basically, you can ask yourself, well, what made that match so great? It was the unpredictability over the outcome. It wasn't, you know, predictable. It was the build. It was awesome. They had drama after every near fall. They didn't overdo the near falls, and that was at a different time where they weren't doing near falls in every match. It felt still special at that point. That was another factor. It's hard to kind of have that today, but there are still classic matches that we see even in 2020, 2019, 2018. So it's not just a matter of like, oh, it was back then, it was a different time, that's why. Like, you could still have an amazing match nowadays, just under different circumstances. But, the aftermath was really good. The right person goes over. People aren't, like, pissed about it or like, oh, man, that was awful. Like, why would they do that? It's got to check off every box imaginable, and I think Shawn Michaels and Taker did that at WrestleMania 25. So I don't think Edge and Orton will have a better match than that, even if they had everything else, and the build is great, the emotion is there, the intensity is there, the in-ring action is exciting, they have me sitting on the edge of my seat. It will not be, I promise you, the greatest match of all time without a crowd there to enjoy it, and to give it the environment, the electric environment that match would deserve. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, what are your thoughts on Austin Theory becoming Seth Rollins' new disciple? Do you think Ruby Riott should join as Seth's female disciple? Two good questions. I think Jeremy actually asked that same first question a couple of months ago. I feel like I've answered this before, like maybe back in March, right after he got called up to the main roster. And I don't remember if I hated the idea or if I liked the idea. I'm not really sure. I don't really remember. If I didn't like the idea, then I feel bad and I'm sorry, because that is a very good idea. I really liked where they went with that on Monday's Raw when they kicked him out of the Zelina Vega stable, and then Rollins recruited him soon after, a lot like he recruited Buddy Murphy a couple of months ago, or Murphy at this point, sorry. It's not Buddy no more, it's just Murphy. Don't call me Buddy Murphy. But anyway, I think Theory's a better fit for the Seth Rollins faction than he is the Zelina Vega faction, just based off the chemistry that he would have with Rollins and Murphy compared to Andrade and Angel Garza. And it was a cool little stable. They were never booked like a threat. Literally at any point during their brief existence, that three-man group with Zelina as their manager, they were never, ever positioned as a threat. Theory may have beaten one or two people like a fucking Akira Tozawa or whatever. Other than that, the guy was a loser. Hopefully he'll have better luck alongside Seth Rollins, and Rollins needs more disciples anyway. AOP will presumably be out for a while. One of them got hurt again. I don't know which one it was, but they got hurt back in March, which is why we haven't seen him since. So he has Murphy still, which is cool, but I feel like at least one other person would help, and Theory is that person. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to them sending him back down to NXT because he barely had a run there. Like, he didn't even really do anything before getting called up, which was completely random. But if they're so high on Theory, I would expect them to really, really push him the same way they have Murphy alongside Seth. If he's just their whipping boy, then what's even the point? Like, just send the guy back down to NXT. But it has potential. I don't want to say it's going to be the greatest thing ever just because we don't know. It's a matter of what the aftermath is, the booking, how they handle him going forward. But so far, so good. And I do like the idea of these two, or rather these three, running rampant over the Raw roster and wreaking havoc. So we'll see where it goes. As for the second part of his question, I do like Ruby Riott alongside Seth. I didn't really think about that when people talk about, like, first of all, not every faction needs a female member, but I do think she would be a good fit. I mean, I think she fits more with Rollins' old persona, like the grunge music type thing, and I feel like they kind of fit well together. He's not really doing that anymore. He's more of the Monday Night Messiah now, but she has been losing for ages. She has not won a match on WWE TV, let alone, I don't think at all, since February of 2019. How bad is that? Now, I know she was out injured for a long period of time. She was out injured from like April through January or February, so that's a big chunk of time. But even still, she's been back for months now. She has not won a single match. She's lost to Asuka. She lost to Charlotte Flair on Raw. She lost to Liv Morgan multiple times. She lost to Bianca Belair in main event. She has lost to literally everybody. So, at this point, why not? I'm not sure if it's going to salvage her career, but it's better than nothing. She is too talented to continue to be wasted. So honestly, I really like that idea a lot. I don't see her getting pushed anytime soon, just because they have a lot of heels in that Raw women's division right now. Between Sheena, Natalya might be going to heel. Asuka's still the Raw women's champion. I think her and Kairi are technically still heels, based off how they came across on Raw this week. I mean, there's no crowd, so it's hard to say. But, yeah. I do think Ruby with Seth and Murphy and Austin Theory would be a good fit. At RJ_Marceau, Mr. Marceau's first question was, who was your pick to win the AEW Casino ladder match at Double or Nothing? That's a good question. There's so many good talents in there between, Frankie Kazarian, and you have Scorpio Sky. Phoenix is awesome. Orange Cassidy, Colt Cabana, Darby Allin. Darby Allin is still my pick. The ninth and final member, I think Luchasaurus is in it too. Luchasaurus would be a cool winner because I think he is main event bound at some point just because the guy is so good. Granted, there's no crowds right now, but the guy was mega over before everything happened. So Luchasaurus would be a pleasant surprise. Darby Allin kind of feels like a lock to me. Not just because he was the first person announced. I think Kip Sabian's in there too. But just because he should be in the main event. Darby Allin is that good. He could always go after the AEW TNT title after Cody wins it or Lance Archer wins it, but he's already had matches with both of those guys, and he's lost to both of them. Or actually, no, he's never faced Archer. I forgot that Allen actually lost to Cody in the semifinals and not Archer. So, anyway, he can go after that championship if he wanted. Him as a potential future world championship challenger. He's already challenged for the world championship before against Chris Jericho. So him and Moxley again would be cool. I think they've only had one match, I believe, on AEW TV. They had a great Northeast wrestling match. It was Moxley's first match back on the indie scene about a year ago. Almost exactly. And Alexis and I were there. They faced each other. And I had never really been familiar with Darby Allin, but he super impressed me on that evening, and I've been a fan ever since. And I think they had a match on AEW TV like late last year, right after Revolution, maybe like right before Thanksgiving or whatever. So, I would love a rematch this time for the AEW World Championship. I don't think Allen wins, but it would be cool. If not Allen, then maybe Luchasaurus. I have no idea who the ninth person may be. I don't think that's one of the questions here. Actually, that is one of the questions, so I'll get to that later. But as of right now, Darby Allin is my pick to win. His second question, which match are you looking forward to the most at Double or Nothing? RJ and I have discussed this before. I don't feel like it's a $50 card, just because they put it together at the last minute. I don't honestly really care about Moxley and Brody Lee, just because it came together so quickly, and I don't think Brody Lee should win, or he shouldn't lose either, so it's kind of a lose-lose situation. There's no crowd, I don't know, a lot of the matches feel thrown together. It does look like a good card, and I am looking forward to the show. At the same time, though, it's just, I don't know, I'm not a big Like I'm not I'm not of the mindset that this is going to be some grand show, like a big pay-per-view. It doesn't feel like their biggest pay-per-view of the year. Not a big fan of the card they have, but from what we have lined up, it looks like it could be a promising, entertaining show. But what match am I looking forward to the most? Probably Cody and Archer, just because it's been built up so well. Archer's really impressed me since he came over to AEW. I think he's a star on the rise. So I think him and Cody will have a great match. Lee and Moxley, not really. The Casino Ladder match should be great. Even without a crowd, should be very good. 9 people seems like a fucking lot, but maybe there's like a different type of rule to it because it's called a Casino Ladder match. So maybe it's like a gauntlet match. I don't know. Anyway, though, I think it should be a very good show, and I'm trying to think of what else is on the card. Hikaru Shida and Nyla Rose could be a good match. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but I do think Cody and Archer might be the match of the night, and it's probably the match that I'm looking forward to the most. At noob_n_code 1991, do you want the next Mae Young Classic to have a much heavier focus on women's tag teams instead of singles competition? And who do you want to see in it? Personally, I say have the Mae Young Classic take place after the Royal Rumble, and the finals will be at WrestleMania. The issue with that, it's not a bad idea, but I feel like it would get lost in the shuffle on the road to WrestleMania. I feel like there's just so much going on between the Rumble and WrestleMania. Granted, that's when they did the dumb mixed match challenge a few years ago. But the fact that, a lot of people don't remember that tells you all you need to know about that show. And the fact that the timing was bad. They did it again later on that year in like the fall or the winter of 2018. The show still sucked. I love the Mae Young Classic, and they should absolutely bring it back. I actually had a chance to chat with Rhea Ripley about NXT, Mae Young Classic, and all this other great stuff. That article should be up right now as you're listening to this on dailyddt.com, so check out that exclusive interview. But she talked about the Mae Young Classic, why she wants it back, how she got her start in the Mae Young Classic. I would love to see it back, too. I like the timing in the summer, personally. I think it was cool in the summer. You do the finals either in September or October. They did it at Evolution a few years ago, but I think it'd be just as cool if they did the finals on a WWE pay-per-view or at a takeover, whatever, in the fall. So it would be nice to see it back this year. I don't think it's coming back this year just because of the whole current situation. There's no fans. They're not bringing in new talent right now, I would assume. And they have announced nothing of the sort in regards to another Mae Young Classic anytime soon. But tag teams, it's not a bad idea. But the issue with that is that there's literally... First of all, WWE has no women's tag teams. I don't think there's enough women's tag teams out there in the world of wrestling to justify doing a women's tag team tournament. So, no, don't really like the idea. They should definitely still focus on the singles competition. You can make tag teams out of the people that are in the singles competition tournament. But I'm not a big fan of women's tag team tournament just because there's not a lot of tag teams as it is out there, let alone in WWE. So, I do want to see it back. And who I would want to see in it, I feel like a lot of people who I would want to see in it are either, in AEW or in WWE. They signed pretty much everyone that was like a star from the last couple of Mae Young Classics. Rosemary from Impact would be nice. I don't know if her gimmick would work in WWE. I think she recently re-signed with Impact, so probably not. That's not going to happen. Trying to think of who else. I don't know. Hikaru Shida would be cool, but again, she's in AEW. Tenille Dashwood, but she was just with the company a couple of years ago. She's in Impact right now. Tessa Blanchard, she was in the first one, got bumped by Kairi Sane, but I don't think she's going anywhere. I don't think she's coming to WWE anytime soon. She's also, it's also in the middle of the pandemic, so again, probably not anytime soon. I'm trying to think of who else. Taya Valkyrie, maybe. Madison Rayne was in it a couple of years ago. Ring of Honor doesn't really have anyone that I would say, bring them in, blah, blah, blah. Maybe with the NWA, I think, what's her name? Thunder Rosa wasn't in the Mae Young Classic at all, was she? She's really good. She's really impressed me. It'd be cool to see her in it. But other than that, I can't really think of many major stars that aren't already signed to WWE or AEW. Again, there's Tessa, but a lot of these people are being held down by contracts right now. So I think just a couple of years ago when they had Madison Rayne in it, and Mercedes Martinez, and Toni Storm, and Rhea, who was already in the company, mind you, Io Shirai, and all these other people, it was the perfect storm. Because a lot of those people were contractually free. Deonna Purrazzo, Mia Yim, and they were able to sign a lot of them, and give a lot of those people, spotlight and whatnot. So I don't see that happening again. I do want to see a third Mae Young Classic, but I'm honestly not really sure outside of a few names who they would put in it. At Iwagu91, their first question was, considering that Rocky Johnson, The Rock's father, Kobe Bryant, Howard Finkel, and Larry Zonka have died, Shad Gaspard has been missing. He sent this in yesterday. Unfortunately, has been, again, like I said at the start of the show, it has been confirmed that he passed away, unfortunately. And coronavirus ensuing. Has this year been brutal, despite it still being the first half of it? Yeah, this first half of 2020 has been just a complete shit show. I mean, if you just said the pandemic alone, it would be like, yeah, just throw the year in the trash. But, like, you consider everyone that you just said, Kobe Bryant's death was really the first big blow of 2020. That was also the same day as the Rumble, so it's like, oh, maybe the year won't be all bad. But then, like, Howard Finkel passes away. Like, that was a big blow. I met him a couple of years ago. Really nice guy. That was a very sad passing. Larry Zonka, just way too young, and that was just very shocking. Rocky Johnson being another one, as you mentioned, from a couple of months ago. Forgot about that. Shad Gaspard passing away today. Just some really, really sad shit. So, yeah, 2020 could just go fuck itself. It's just been a terrible year all around. And that's not even considering the potential murder hornets that might be on their way to the United States. You failed to mention that, and that's just as bad. The worst may yet to come here in 2020. But his second question: what do you think of Owen Hart's widow Martha still refusing to let her late husband be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? Honestly, for all these years, I don't really remember what my stance was originally. I might have said, just let him in, like, don't be bitter, blah, blah, blah. After listening to her on Talk is Jericho and after watching that Dark Side of the Ring special, I am fully of the belief he should never be in that WWE Hall of Fame. And not because for the same reasons as Benoit. Honestly, Benoit might have a better shot of going in the Hall of Fame than Owen Hart. Just because no family member is saying, Benoit should not be in there. If anything, the son is advocating for it, honestly. But for the Owen Hart family, Martha and her son and daughter, they are fully against the idea of him ever going in. And honestly, I completely understand. The company that runs this Hall of Fame was responsible for his death. They would be making money off of it. They've put all this time and effort into making money for this charity in Owen Hart's name. I think it's called the Owen Hart Foundation or something along those lines. Why would they jeopardize that or ruin that by putting, it would be cool for the fans to honor his legacy and whatever and his career, but that is minuscule compared to what's at stake here. Not just at stake, but like everything this woman went through with the company and them suing her, and they gave her like an $18 million law or settlement, I believe, was what ended up happening. But that still doesn't make up for the fact. And she said even outright, I didn't want the settlement. She wanted justice, and I don't think putting him in the Hall of Fame is justice. I know we all want this grand ending like The Ultimate Warrior and Bruno and Bret Hart, where they all come back. It's not a matter of that. He is not alive anymore, and the family that is still here realizes, and then they absolutely should, it's their choice, that the company that, not killed him on purpose, but that was responsible, negligent enough to allow him to die with the equipment they had. That's a whole other story. We just watched the episode, and I'll talk about it more in detail probably tomorrow on Wrestle Rant Radio with RJ. Why would they allow him? Why would the family allow WWE to honor him, given the circumstances? So I completely get where she's coming from, and quite honestly, I totally understand if he never goes in. Like, it's cool for the fans for him to be in. Like, who gives a shit? It's a fucking WWE Hall of Fame. Like, is it prestigious to a certain extent? Yes, but it's not bigger than this. His third question: who do you think will be the final competitor of the ladder match at Double or Nothing? I've seen some people say, like, Drew Gulak. He just left WWE about a week ago. Apparently his contract expired. They opted not to renew it. So I guess that's a possibility. That would be kind of cool. I don't know if it's going to be Gulak, but I'm setting myself up to believe it might be like Amazing Red or something, which would be nice. I want it to be like a bigger name than like an Amazing Red, like someone that's like fresh off of a WWE release or whatever. I mean, I guess the people that were just released can't go anywhere, like an EC3 can't go anywhere just because they have a non-compete clause for the next 3 months or 2 months at this point. Like, it won't be the Revival because it's just one person. So I don't know. I don't know who it could be. Maybe a Jeff Cobb. I think they were thinking about bringing him in a couple of months ago before this whole thing happened. So it could be a Cobb. My money's probably on Cobb or, again, Drew Gulak, maybe, because he doesn't have a non-compete clause. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully it delivers and it ain't someone like a fucking, I don't know, like, Christopher Daniels, surprise. Like, I mean, again, who cares, I don't think it should be anyone already on the roster. It should be someone outside of the company. I don't know who that would be, but hopefully it lives up to the hype. And finally, also from @Iwagu91, what did you think of All In if you watched it? I'm sure I've said this before, but I thought it was a great show. I thought it was an awesome, celebration, in a word, of independent wrestling. Just because at that time it was so crazy, and I remember watching that show, not live, I think I was working that night or something, but like the next day, and thinking, holy shit, like they got talent from everywhere, dude. Everywhere except for WWE. They had talent from MLW. They had talent from Impact on that show. They had talent from Ring of Honor. They had talent from New Japan Pro Wrestling. They had talent from Lucha Underground. They had a lot of talent on that show. Pretty much everyone except for WWE for obvious reasons. And it was just a great show. They had a lot of good matches. It wasn't the greatest show on earth or whatever by any means. But as a fun, big show, for the big first show of its kind, non-WWE show that sold out in Chicago, it was pretty awesome and it laid the groundwork for what we know today as AEW. So by all accounts, it was a giant success, and I mean, it has to be considered a success considering it laid the groundwork for AEW. So, but it's a great show. I think you can watch it back. It's available on Honor Club, actually. It's available on Honor Club. If you go back and watch it, I might have to do a live stream of that sometime, maybe with RJ or with Alexis or whatever. I don't know. I want to watch back that show. But RJ and I are watching Double or Nothing, or have watched Double or Nothing by the time you listen to this, so check that out. And so check that out right here on the channel. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video. All that stuff is greatly appreciated. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. It means a lot. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode, but if you want to send in a question to the show, you can tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. You can find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comments section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. And last but not least, be sure to check out my exclusive interview, as I mentioned earlier, with WWE NXT superstar, former NXT Women's Champion, Rhea Ripley, which should be available right now as you're listening to this on DailyDDT.com. Until next time, guys, I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Be sure to check out that aforementioned AEW Double or Nothing 2019 live stream with Mr. Marceau and myself. But other than that, guys, have a great one. Thoughts and condolences go out one more time to the family and friends of Shad Gaspard and Larry Zonka. Heartbreaking losses. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, guys, and I'll catch your ass down the road.